Let's see.
Okay, that's good.
Well, a lot of questions I had were already answered in your lectures also.
Okay.
One question about the penguin diagrams. You are the inventor of them, and they are a result of a bet you made in a game of darts in a pub.
In a pub, that's right.
Are there more bets running still?
No, not at the moment.
No.
But I should say I didn't invent the penguin diagrams. The diagrams had been, brought into physics earlier. What I did was invent the name.
Okay, and that was a result of a bet. You had to mention the name penguin in the article, wasn't it?
That's correct. So the bet was that if I lost the game of darts, I should put the word penguin into my next paper. And I lost the game of darts, and it was difficult to imagine how to get the word penguin into a scientific paper. But anyway, these diagrams, if you look at them in a certain enlightened point of view, look a little bit like penguins.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a funny story.
It's funny. Those diagrams have to do with the Z prime particle, isn't it? There are. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, I do have to interrupt. The taxi company wants to know your room number so that they can call you when they arrive.
Well, I haven't been to the hotel yet, so I don't know.
You don't know? Okay, fine, we'll find another way.
Yep.
And it's the Hilton,
Yeah.
correct? Okay. And you wanted to be at Schiphol at 8:30.
Latest 8:30.
They said, just to make sure.
So we go on. So this diagram has to do with the Z prime particle, if I am correct, or no?
No. So it's a process where one type of quark can change into another type of quark through quantum effects. And it doesn't necessarily involve the Z prime. It could do, but usually one thinks of it in connection with a photon or a gluon or a Z particle, not a Z prime particle.
Okay. And during the first run of the LHC, they saw in the one of the four detectors an anomaly in the LHCb detector, and that anomaly persisted. So what do you think that's the diagram.
So then you can radiate off here a photon or a gluon or a Z particle. But you didn't have to radiate off a Z prime particle.
Can be also something else.
Yeah. Right. So there have been various processes which can be explained in terms of these penguin diagrams. And yes, in particular, the LHCb experiment sees some evidence to those diagrams.
Okay. What was also mentioned in one of your the presentations was the future of the particle colliders. There is already the decision to make another the international linear collider in Japan.
Well, that's still at the level of a proposal. So Japanese physicists have proposed it to the Japanese government, but I think the Japanese government wants to know whether there's broad support for it or not. So they're talking to other governments, and the Japanese Science Council is taking opinions also within Japan as to how high a priority to give it.
Okay, but is there a possibility that in the LHC protons are colliding, but the future is electron-positron collisions? They are much cleaner than the proton collisions. Is there one way or another a possibility to transform the LHC to an electron-positron collider?
Of course, that was what it was before. It was a proton-proton.
The LEP.
The LEP accelerator
yes.
in the same tunnel as electron-positron collider. But you could, in principle, go back to doing electrons and positrons, and now technology is advanced, and you can get a much higher collision rate than was possible in the old days of LEP. But I think ideally you would prefer a larger ring.
Okay. And there are ideas about that, making a 100 kilometers ring.
So there's this idea, as you say, of digging a 100-kilometer ring and then putting in it either an electron-positron collider or a proton-proton collider, or both, one after the other.
Okay, but the big problem is, of course, money. in this time of with the crisis around us.
Yeah.
You have to go to Greece tomorrow, so maybe you're going to deal about money.
Well, it's a question of priorities, right? I mean, in the case of Greece, we're talking about hundreds of billions of euros.
Yes.
And this thing wouldn't cost hundreds of billions of euros.
Not.
No. So it's a question of what people want to spend their money on. Do they want to understand the universe better, or do they want to have more people in jobs in Greece, or do they want another nuclear submarine, or do they want what do they want?
Yeah. Nowadays, I would think that they want to have a bigger army, the danger of the East, Russia, etc. So I think that priorities are a bit not very good for science.
Nothing wrong with the Russians? Sorry.
Well, I don't know. I mean, in the case of the UK, we have all these nuclear submarines. I don't think the nuclear submarines have any effect on what's happening in the Ukraine.
No. Correct. A couple of years after the end of Run 1, Suzy, supersymmetry, was a bit of, it was not very popular anymore. There were headlines, is Suzy in the hospital? Is it dead? I can remember those discussions. Right. How is it now?
Well, I know my own point of view is that, it's disappointing that Suzy wasn't found. On the other hand, neither was anything else. And I think that if you look at the properties of the Higgs boson, they are, sort of what you would expect if there was supersymmetry, but just at a higher energy scale. Whereas rival ideas based on composite models or strongly interacting Higgs bosons, those seem to be disfavored by the data. So I would say that, relative to alternatives, supersymmetry is actually doing rather well.
Well, we have to wait for it. Next month, collisions are starting.
You won't know next month, right? It'll take a
No,
while.
we have to be patient.
Well, I think you have to wait. Well, by the end of this year, given any luck, the amount of luminosity that will have been accumulated will be such that the physics reach will be greater than it was with the first run of the LHC. Yes. So let's discuss again at the end of the year.
Okay.
And if something is found, then what about Verlinde's story? It will collapse?
No, I don't think so, because he's thinking about an entirely separate set of questions, right? He's trying to formulate a new theory of gravity.
Yeah, but he says dark matter. If you find something that explains dark matter in supersymmetry, that's completely different of what Verlinde is saying.
Yeah, well, I must admit I'm rather sceptical about that. I don't follow the details of his theory, but I find it very difficult to believe that he could construct a theory of structures and formation of structures in the universe without dark matter. I mean, it's one thing to reproduce, one curve that modified Newtonian dynamics MOND can produce, but there's a whole bunch of other pieces of evidence for dark matter, all sorts of different astrophysical scales and cosmological scales. So I think there's a lot more data to be addressed than what he mentioned in his talk.
I agree. Yeah.
For instance, the distribution of dark matter, they have observed by way of the lenses, the
right, exactly.
distribution
for example.
It's not spread out evenly. So.
Right, for example.
Yes. Last question, then we have to stop this. Recent years, and they mentioned it too, there's the relationship between Einstein-Rosen, wormholes, and Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen, the quantum entanglement. There's a new theory, Verlinde mentioned it, of Susskind and Maldacena.
Right.
How do you see this theory? Does it have potential?
Well, it's something that I find a fascinating suggestion. I wouldn't claim to really have understood the idea, and at first sight it seems extremely far-fetched, but it's not obviously impossible, and I think it's a very intriguing idea.
Yes.
But I wouldn't go further than that. I'm just not an expert in the field.
Okay. Me neither, though. Okay. Can we have a picture?
I
Jan?
already took a picture.
Oh, you took a picture. Oh, that's